We laugh. We cry. We learn. But really, what doesn't kill you makes you better at managing clients and everyone. I'm Morgan Friedman, and this is Client Horror Stories.
Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Client Horror Stories. Very excited to have with me today the one and only Tim Brownson. How are you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing good, thanks, Morgan. How are you?
I am excited to have you here today. I enjoyed our preparatory call a few weeks ago, and the moment is finally here.
Yes, and I'm stoked to be here. I always like to talk about my big failures in life.
So, speaking about that, I have my drink in hand. I am all ears to hear about your worst client horror story experience.
Okay, so it was would have been 2006, because it was not long after I became a coach and then moved to the US. So we moved to the US in February 2006.
Okay.
And I had got no clients, or maybe I got one. I think I got one from referral from the only person I knew in the Orlando area. Mm-hmm. And then this guy contacted me and he told me a little bit about his personal life, that he wanted some help with, just away from his business, successful business person. And he wanted to know if I would go to him, basically. I mean, it said on my website, you must come to me. But I thought, well, okay, I need the clients, basically. I need to start bringing some money in. Otherwise, I'm going back into sales. And then when he gave me his address, it was like, yes, I'm definitely going there. Because he lived in a place called Windermere, which is just west of Orlando. Very, very elite prestige zip code. A lot of the US Ryder Cup golfers play out there, or the pro circuit golfers, and he got a beachfront house. I thought, this is fantastic. So I went to see him and we did the first session. I was there maybe 2 hours, which is twice as long as they intended, but he talked and he gave me a tour of his house. And I said, well, can we sort payment out now? And he said, I can't actually, can we do payment next time? Is that okay? And I'm like, okay, all right, we can maybe do that then. So I went away and I felt a little bit uncomfortable with that. So I went away and I went back the next time, a week or so later. And in my second session, I always do core values. I always like to really get under the skin of what makes somebody tick. And we did that session, and then we got to the end of it, and he carried on talking. And I said, listen, I'm going to have to go. Can we sort out payment? He said, oh, yeah, of course. Hang on a minute. And he disappeared, and he was gone a while. And then he shouted, he sort of poked his head around. I was actually in the main room. And he said, Tim, come here. And I thought he was going to take me to give me a check. And this was back in the day when people cut checks. You remember those kids? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I thought he was going to go and give me a check.
By the way, the younger people watching us will be like, what is that?
I know, exactly. Yeah, checks, they were the thing, how you paid people. And so I went into what was his office, and he got his laptop open. He said, come and look at this. And he took me around his side of the desk, and he got an Excel spreadsheet. And I am not a spreadsheet person. I am not an accounts person. He's got all these numbers on. And I said, yeah, I didn't really know what he was showing me. He said, look at this. And he went through all these numbers. Basically, cut a long story short, he was showing me how he was taking $18,000 out of his business. It got, well, I won't mention the business, although 20 years on, I'm sure it's out of business by now, but how he's taking $18,000. I honestly can't remember now if it was a week or a month, but it doesn't really matter. It's still pretty bad. Out of his business to pay for his house and his lifestyle, but he wasn't paying any of his employees. And he thought it was really clever that he was moving this money, doing these things and telling his employees that he couldn't pay them. So they were working for effectively nothing. I don't know how long that had been running for. Go on and say.
Wow. Okay. So I have a few interesting stories so far. I have a few comments and questions. First, I just kind of want to understand what he's thinking, because if you don't pay your employees for more than a few days or weeks or something, they're going to disappear. So was he like planning on just shutting down the business, and this is his way of shutting it down?
Yeah, I think he was just trying to get as much money out of the business before he wrapped it up. And you can play people along for a little while. Remember, we're going back to, I said 2006, it would have been late 2006. So maybe it was before. I was going to say maybe it was the financial crisis times where, that was right towards the end of 2007, wasn't it? I can't remember the ins and outs, but at that point, I was just, and the irony, we just done a session on values, on what is really important, what drives us, what motivates us. And I can't remember what his values were now, but I'm sure they weren't stealing. Nobody really values that. So I just said, look, we're done here. And I just went back into the room, picked up my suitcase, didn't even have a laptop. This is how long ago, it was pen and paper, and left. And then when I got outside, I realised I hadn't been paid. There is no way he's going to pay me now. So that was it, and I never heard from him again. And
okay, so this is interesting. There are a few aspects of this that might be useful to dive into. So first, what we were saying a minute ago, I think, is worth elaborating a bit. That he was planning on closing the business, and this is his sneaky way of trying to get an extra 10 cents for himself and screw over the poor employees. And it's interesting to me how many people don't value their reputation. Like, you do things like this. Right. Like, everyone in your town, your community, your industry is going to know, he's a bad actor. So you would have thought that someone would have cared more about their reputation than getting 10 cents, but apparently not.
Yeah, apparently not. And in a small sort of community like Windermere was, that's the kind of work that will get round very quickly. I don't know. I mean, I've met people like that that seem to have had an integrity bypass operation or something, and I'm not sure how they ever managed to start businesses again or even, bring in income again. But some of them do. Some of them get away with it. But the thing is, after the first, and I missed out a little bit actually, after the first session I had with him, I just felt something was off. And I said to my wife when I got home, because first of all, I'd let him, I'd sort of let him set the rules by me going to him, and it said clearly I think that's only one of two times I've ever done that, and the other time was for completely different reasons. I favoured somebody, so I let him set the rules, and then the first session went way over, and I said to my wife, "There's something I just don't gel with this guy," and I should have basically walked away at that point, because anybody who's in business knows, for the most part, it's not always the case, but usually your gut's right about people. If you have a sense that, I'm not sure if I'm going to work well with this person, it's not very often, 20 years now of coaching, 20 years before that in sales, I could probably count the times on one hand where I've had a bad feeling about somebody, and then it's turned out to be nothing, and they were a really good person and we've got on well. It just very rarely happens.
That makes sense. Another aspect of the story that I find interesting is how open and flagrant he was, like telling you, he was wearing it like as a sign of pride, because I would have thought that someone that would try to screw over people would be ashamed and would try to keep it on the down low, but he was the opposite.
Yeah, I think he thought it was just clever. I think he thought, look how clever I'm getting away with this. And like I said, it's best part of 20 years now. I can't remember the intricacies of it. Okay. But he clearly thought he was pulling the wool over people's eyes. And I would in some way admire him for doing this. I just like he was burning mad off or something. Well done for you for getting all that money, but not really. It's just like that's not a good thing.
So I'm so to me an interesting consequence of this is we were saying a few minutes ago that people do things like this, they'll get a bad reputation. But the fact that he was so open about it, like showing it off, to me, I interpret that to mean in his mind, he didn't even think he's doing a bad thing. And like in your words, oh, I just came up with a clever way to save a few £1,000s.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I
And
think to people like that, it's also a power thing. It's I
good
can
point.
do
Good
this, so
point.
therefore I'm going to do it as well.
Ooh, that is a good point. I can, so why not? I think another factor is this. In my experience, there are a lot of people that don't treat other people like humans. Like you're just a
Right,
row on a spreadsheet. You're just an
right.
expense and not that. So it could be in his mind, not viewing them as humans, just viewing them as rows in the spreadsheet. Okay, I moved the numbers on the spreadsheet. Okay, cool. And there's no more negativity to that than editing any other Excel spreadsheet.
Right, exactly. I used to sell into finance directors in the UK, so CFOs in the US, and there when they were looking at things like redundancies, people were literally a number. It was a payroll number that look, if we take these two numbers out, we can save this amount on the bottom line. So I'm sure there's an element to that. Well, I can do this, so why don't
By the way, just thinking more about it, that he was likely not even viewing them as humans. My cynical side thinks that there are far too many people who reach the upper echelons of business who kind of have this sort of sociopathic or psychopathic
oh yeah.
instincts. Like in order to pass a certain level of money,
Hmm.
it's not quite a requirement, but it's something close to a requirement that you need to view people like that. So maybe what was happening was he thought you were like in the club of these sociopaths that or
Yeah.
psychopaths that don't care about anyone. Just everything and everyone is just a number. So he was talking to like a confrere, compadre, equal. When it
Yeah,
turns out
yeah.
you're just like another nice guy.
Yeah, maybe he was sort of vetting me for the sociopath club,
Ooh.
and I failed. I didn't make it in. But you make a good point because I think with some people, when you see people with just insane amounts of wealth, billions, we could be doing this. I'd be sat on a beach in Bali counting my money and laughing a lot. I've no idea. I
But
guess I'll never know.
by the way, I had never heard the phrase "sliding doors moment," but I remember the movie on that
Yeah,
subject from 20 years ago.
yeah.
So I get the reference. So what's interesting about that is in every episode of Klein Horror Stories, I try to get at least one new lesson in, and it's
Mm,
come up in the past. The lesson that everything is a test, and
mm.
I like telling people about the like people you might work with, taking them to a restaurant, because how people treat the staff in a restaurant is
Yeah,
often
yeah,
is
yeah.
often a test of whether they're a good person. So I often think about it and talk about it in the sense of you want to test people you want to work with, potential clients, potential bosses, for the clues if they're a nice person. But here it's working exactly in reverse, where like you're being tested
Mm.
to see, are you enough of a psychopath asshole?
Mm. Yeah, and a failed. Yeah, I think for me the big learning moment for this it is the not listening to my gut instinct.
Ooh,
It
okay,
is,
okay, that helps about
or
that.
at least not examining it, Morgan. It's fine. Sometimes our gut instinct can be wrong. It absolutely can be wrong. People have died because they've listened to their gut instincts. But there are times when if you just take a step back and think, okay, what's going on here? Why am I uncomfortable about this? And then you can start to put things together. Maybe it's a false alarm, but it didn't take me long in coaching to start listening to my gut on consult calls with people, a year or two maybe, because early on, I'd be thinking, especially when I'm short of clients, you know what, I could probably do this. Yeah, I think you taught yourself into reasons why you can do it. When your first instinct was, no, actually, I haven't got the patience to work with somebody like this, or I'm not organised enough to work with a person that's this scattered. Do you know what I mean? So it's the gut instinct for me in business that we need to pay more attention to, because it's easy to overrule it, very easy.
Yeah, and until this conversation, did you see or notice any other clues about, like, did anything else smell off about him, or did you or tell us about your gut
Do you
instinct?
know? Yeah, I'm going to be honest and say I can't remember. I can just remember saying to my wife, something doesn't feel quite right, and the fact that this guy living on a super exclusive development now, and I don't think I've even, maybe I did think about this at the time and I've forgotten about it, but why did he pick me? I wonder how many people must he have known where, and the thing is, in the coaching industry, the higher you go in the financial pecking order, the more it's done by word of mouth. So if you want to coach millionaires, they're not on Google looking for a life coach.
Right.
It's not like there was no way anybody could have recommended me. That the friend who did know me wouldn't have known him. So it's kind of like, now I'm thinking back, I should have thought, well, how did he find you? So yeah, there was a lot of things, I'm sure, if I'd have stopped, to not being, again, money can cloud. It's like, it's a client, and maybe he knows people, in the Windermere area, and this could get me in with Tiger, because Tiger Woods lived in the same area at the time. It's just, the next thing I know, I'll just be coaching in billionaire sports people, and suddenly I'm back on that beach in Bali, counting my money and laughing a lot. There you go.
That is funny. Tim, we've gotten a couple of nice lessons here. I like the story, and now I usually test people for being nice and see if I'm being tested for how being nice. But now I'm going to start paying attention. Wow, maybe you're actually testing to see how much of an asshole I am. Everyone is looking for something different. Some people are looking for nice people. Some people are looking for not nice people. So this has been wonderful getting to know you, and thank you for coming on to Client Horror Stories.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And everyone who's watched it, thank you for watching it all the way until the end. We hope that you've enjoyed it as much as we had. Until next time.